feel bad. She wants to take it in December, like.
All right, we'll bring the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. Mallory, you want to give us the personnel updates, please?
Sure. We are working on a handful of postings. As we all know, the treasurer posting is open. We have that posted in 9 different areas. Some of them we paid through the state, some with membership agencies, others are just out there for free. We can post.
Who do we have that posted to? I'm curious.
We have, is it ASPA?
Oh, yeah.
VASA.
VASA.
It's on
It's,
Handshake, it's on Indeed, it's on Frontline, it's on our website.
it's on the
put it-
House School Board
Do
Association
we put
website.
it in on OSCPA's, like, job posting board?
I don't think so. It's on the WASBO.
I think it's free,
Ohio CPAs.
Ohio Society CPs, OSCPA job.
OSCPA.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I
I
will look.
It's just a favorite of mine, so I don't know.
don't. WASBO is the organization that treasurers and business managers are typically part of. And they send out a weekly job email, so that email goes out every Tuesday that has us.
And
It
we have,
pretty much covers, doesn't it?
Yeah.
and we have how many?
2 applicants currently. And it closes on the 23rd.
I know one, I don't know the other.
There's a new one that came through this week.
We will get probably more. They usually wait till the end.
A lot of times people wait to the end so their name's not floating around.
It's late in the game, we're gonna be very limited.
And Auburn's also looking for a treasurer too, so that.
And it's, yeah, I think Westchester would be the member, so.
Other postings that we have out there sent yesterday, we have a speech language pathologist. We had a resignation actually come through yesterday. That is one high needs area through Student Services Department that's been posted. We are also searching for an instructional coach for math that would fall under Dr. Malacker's department. And then we have a small handful of intervention specialists. We had some resignations come through. We have some long-term postings. So those are closed. Currently, we're working through those. And athletics, we're searching, I believe primarily now for girls JV assistants. We reposted some of those positions yesterday. One that we haven't discussed recently, we had a technology specialist resign. He was a Riverside graduate and got offered a very nice job in his field technology. He left in April, so that position's been vacant. It's one of, I believe, 4 of the specialists on the technology team, which staffs the entire district.
Was he a fairly recent full-time hire?
He
Yes.
was.
Okay.
Yep. And so that position we would like to get back out there to fill. That is something that technology never stops, the support needs never stop, to get that filled and trained for the beginning of the school year. So that's
We
one.
have it filled right now as temporary through summer work,
Mhm.
but those are students who are gonna go back to school. And when they go back to school in August, we need that position. So
What does that job pay?
Not much.
I know that.
It's salary.
It's salaried.
It's exempt to 2 60-day contract.
I'm not sure what it starts at.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I want to say 40s.
For a college graduate. No college graduate?
No, count, just technology skills, just
Well, then that's more,
skills.
that's
Yeah.
more doable.
There are a couple other resignations we are anticipating to post and move on quickly, so, as we get them all.
What kind of categories?
A couple administrative, maybe some teaching.
Right now, our department, we're really just working on some of the typical summer items. There's a lot of staff moving classrooms, people who requested transfers, different buildings, different subjects. You'll see those on the agenda. We also have all of the special needs assistants ready to go. Typically, their assignments change with enrollment needs and caseloads in buildings, so those will all be on this agenda as well. Working through a lot of permit renewals, those again with the special needs assistants and our educational assistants. Anyone that works with kids, we do require them to get it's called an educational assistant permit through the State Board of Education. Those typically are renewed each year. Some have 4-year licensure, so those all come through for review, signature, and they have to have those approved and in hand, just like a teaching license, the first day of school.
It's required to have those renewed.
Those you do have to have a completed high school diploma. There are some trainings online that you have to acknowledge you understand what it means to work with children. Some safety trainings go along with that.
Some ongoing
Professional
education.
development, absolutely. And then just general summer projects in HR, we are working to kind of continue to enhance our onboarding process for recruitment and retention, and hoping to move a lot of our current paper forms that we have out there on our website internally, so our staff know how to find them, where to get them. So more updates on that coming. And then the agenda, as I mentioned, we do have a lot of transfers happening, location changes. Those have to go on for payroll purposes. The science of reading, it's a nice chunk. The last group of certified teachers will be on there for their reimbursements as they've completed the training. And then we do have our new executive director of student services will be on the agenda, along with some transition days as she's already started kind of working in with Cheryl to get that happening before Cheryl retires. And also there is Cheryl's current administrative assistant. She's a 211. She's a 10-month secretary,
10-month secretary,
essentially. There is days over the summer that she is needed here in-house, so we're adding up to 10 extended days to be paid for her. There's lots of, I believe, is it screenings that happen over summer? What does she
So
support?
the preschool team is in full swing all summer long, and then we do get record requests that, from other districts of students transferring into other districts, as well as we get a number of students coming into our district that when that piles up, it's really difficult to have a huge stack of, transfer students that aren't being processed throughout the summer. So what I spoke to her about was 1 day a week, which is essentially 6 days, between the end of her this year contract and the start of her next year contract, and then up to additional 4 days if needed, mostly because of the new director.
It's part of the transition as
Right,
well.
exactly, yeah.
So you'll see that on the agenda.
Okay.
That's about all that I have.
Okay, thanks. Gary?
All right, board agenda review. June is always our biggest agenda for finance, just because there's a lot of,
double.
last
Not
year.
yet, we're on
Last year it
Y.
went through double PP and it always makes me happy.
Yeah. Right now, we're through Y on our agenda, but there's going to be more added as we wrap things up, and usually it's a last minute rush to get things on, just because there's so much that happens in June. We'll have our monthly financial reports on there. We'll also have our final appropriations for the fiscal year, so we adjust our budget at year end. Typically, we have to increase, we don't touch the general fund typically, it's more of the grant funds where we adjust, and food service is a little over this year, so we have to increase them. We have to increase the 007 fund, which is our first year having the foundation funds and scholarships. They awarded a few extra scholarships this year, so it's a little bit higher than we anticipated. Just we have to, the appropriation for that fund's only 10 or 12,000, so I think they awarded a couple extra scholarships this year than they typically do. And so we'll have to increase that. And then for our grant funds, typically
We didn't have new scholarship funds, did we?
It wasn't any new funds, but they awarded either.
No,
more
there was,
or-
so there was one that was awarded, that was an extra one, but it was based on an essay that was written that was shared, and the foundation was so moved by it, they decided to award an additional scholarship.
Oh, the family or
Yeah,
whatever?
the family. It was one of those where,
Yeah.
I forget which specific foundation it was, but it's a
The
really,
Alumni Association.
yeah, it's a really touching story.
And then for our grant funds, like our federal grant funds, typically we reduce the budget down to what the actual spending is, because you can only spend what you're gonna receive, so those always get adjusted at year end. So that's what you'll see on those appropriations. We'll post them, they'll be part of the agenda that goes on Tuesday. We may tweak the numbers Wednesday and Thursday as we're closing things out, because, the final payroll doesn't get posted till that Tuesday next week. We'll probably have it posted maybe not till Wednesday, and then we have to kind of go through and make sure everything is correct, so it's the timing thing. So those numbers could change from what's on the initial agenda that goes out, but it's nothing that's gonna be material, just a year-end cleanup. We'll also have to approve temporary appropriations for next year, so it's a draft of what the budget might look like for us for next year. We have to do that by June 30th each year, and then in September, we typically finalize permanent appropriations by law. They have to be done by October 1st. So a lot of times it's more of the grant funds again. We don't have our final allocations. We don't have our carryover amounts from this year going to next year. So those things get adjusted from what we approved in June to what we'll revise in September. There'll also be, every year we do a property tax advance resolution, basically authorizing us to get advances from the county auditor. It's an annual routine measure there. We'll have grant acceptance on there for our typical grants. We also got awarded a Attorney General School Safety Grant. I think it's around 17-some thousand. That we're gonna, we applied for some additional cameras and some door access security here in the band room, and that was awarded. So that will probably be on this agenda. We also have our annual property and liability coverage approval. That's around $242,000 this year. It was around 230 something last year. We usually get 3 quotes on it. The other 2 quotes came in over 300,000. So we're sticking with Sorsa, which we've been with for several years now.
I'm sorry, what was that for?
Our general property and liability insurance.
Oh, okay. Do we get that through anyone?
It's we're through the Schools of Ohio Risk Sharing Authorities called Sorsa, so it's basically
That's south, isn't it?
it's
Sort of?
kind of all over the state. It's just a group of school districts that are it's only school districts in the pool.
It's only insurance?
And it's for the insurance
Okay.
piece. Yeah. And then we'll have our cyber liability coverage, and that goes through Travelers. That's about 16,000 change this year.
What does that cover?
That would cover if you have a data breach, anything that goes into that, because you'd have, whenever like people's information is compromised, you have to send out notices to all those people that.
You have to pay for,
Monitoring.
Credit monitoring, and then there's, typically there's an audit firm that comes in and makes sure what can we do better. We had a breach, it was in 2020, and it was a silly one. It was a kid basically called in a prank to the IT department, which was not our current IT department. We had a third-party contractor that was already being removed from the district, and they called and said, "Hey, I'm Nick Carabine. I need my email password reset." And they said, "Okay, your new password's this," and they got into Nick's email and just got an Infinite Campus, sent out a message to all our parents that your stuff's been compromised, adjusted the website. And it was just a kid screwing around in the middle of the night. We immediately stopped it that next morning, but then we had to have this audit firm come in and look at procedures and all that stuff. And really, it wasn't, nobody hacked anything. It was no sophisticated thing. It was just someone calling in, and our tech vendor just gave out a password, and there you go. Because once you get in someone's email, then you can reset other passwords and emails to that email. And
Not all insurance companies cover that, and it's always a separate policy.
yeah, Sorsa does have a cyber coverage, but it's not as good, so we go with Travelers.
there are requirements that we have to have. Like, we have to have 2-factor authentication in place. We have to have a couple other things to get the rates down. And it also, I think they also run like penetrability tests and things like that if we want. So we have them look into it as well.
Okay.
Would be approval of our annual expense for the time clock system we have in place. There's also our blanket purchase order approvals. So this is basically our utilities, different transportation vendors that we buy tires from, and some of our food service vendors that we buy food from. So they're the annual approvals we have each year. Approval of our substitute purchase order through the ESC of Northeast Ohio. Also there's be here for Stripe for athletic tickets. We have hometown ticketing. There's fees that go through that. It's being paid it's part of the ticket price, but we have to issue that PO to Stripe to cover those fees. And also for Infinite Campus, those processing fees as well. It used to be through what's called a company called Payrix. It's now switching to Stripe. So now we have both of those are through Stripe.
What is happening with Infinite Campus? Do you want to cover that after he's finished?
We are, it's been taken care of. We are through NeoNet has offsourced ours to Connect, and we are using Connect for Infinite Campus to house our Infinite Campus and for support. NeoNet, Connect has actually hired the support staff from NeoNet to go to them as well. So it is, it's been done and there's been no change. You can't see the change.
Yeah.
But it's been taken care of. So everything goes through Connect ITC, which is in Independence, instead of going through NeoNet.
That's the only thing that's moving over.
That is the only thing that's,
'Cause they're not
EMIS
servicing
services,
it.
yeah, EMIS services and all that upstate. That was their immediate solution within 30 days, or that they had, or 60 days. We chose between Connect and Meta. We chose Connect because they were taking the people, they're local.
Okay.
So
And who's servicing the EMIS then?
the EMIS is still through NeoNet.
Even though they're not serving Infinite Campus?
Even though they can't service Infinite Campus, they can service they still have the EMIS staff who understands IC. It's just IC has come out and said you cannot have anyone with a NeoNet email address as a user.
And we have our own internal EMIS now, so.
We have our own internal person, but EMIS is so complicated that they need another person to go through,
Right,
so.
thank you.
There's also the write-off of unclaimed funds. So every year we go through our outstanding checks and we notify those people that have outstanding checks that we can reissue them, and then if people don't respond, we have to put a note unclaimed funds for 5 years, and if they don't claim within 5 years, it goes back into the general fund, so.
What does that normally run,
This
amount-wise?
this year's $466 is going in there. I think there's maybe, I have to go back and look,
Is that pretty typical?
yeah, I think that's pretty normal. I mean, there's a couple $1,000s in the unclaimed funds.
Uh-huh.
It's not significant.
Do we ever send those to the state?
We don't. I don't think we're required to,
Okay.
from my
You have to
understanding.
report them though, don't you?
If we do, we have never done it. I'm
Remember,
not really sure, to be quite honest.
yeah. Unclaimed funds.
Let's see what else. We have, our typical donations and then now certificates. A lot of the donations on here are just donating to the scholarship funds that got paid out, so, that runs through us when we see those.
Are our blanket POs for a portion or are some of them for the whole year?
They're typically for the whole year.
For the whole year, okay.
There's a transfer on here to the termination benefits fund of $200,000. We'll talk about that on the next agenda item. There will probably be a couple other small transfers on there for any funds that may have ran negative. I think the last time I looked, drama was a little bit negative, which we've kind of helped out in the past, and it's usually a couple thousand here and there. It's not significant, but we haven't gone through and done that analysis yet, so there'll be some additional ones added on there. There'll also be advances on here. It says a couple of our grant funds, and then the large one to the Career Tech grant that we've talked about previously will be on this agenda as well. We'll also have just approval of purchase orders for our different legal counsels, Brenza McIntyre and Seed, Scott Scriven, Western Herd, John Podgorski. So there'll be an estimate what those costs will be for next year. The cost of our financial audit will be on there, and then we also have our fee schedule we approve each year, even though there's no changes on it. Best practice is just to approve it each year, because when the auditors come in and say, hey, when did you approve these fee amounts? Well, I've been on audits in the past as an auditor, people are fishing through 5, 10, 15 years of minutes trying to find it. We just approve it every year. That way it's fresh and it's up to date, and typically we don't change much, but if there's a change, it's all on one document.
And that'll be all the student fees, all
Student
the
fees,
athletic
fees,
The one thing
preschool fees.
we had talked about it in buildings and grounds, and we never
Oh, parking.
got the price of parking of the senior lot
Yeah.
and the cost of that if they wanted to paint their space.
And we can always add later.
Okay.
We've adjusted later too. I think we increased preschool. At one point, we had already board approved
Mhm.
the previous amount. We just approved an updated amount.
So we're not charging for parking?
We currently do not.
I never want to go back to that.
It would,
Sorry.
it would be nice just to have a way to have, we have issues with students not parking in the correct spot, and they're gonna help us in terms of enforcement, some of that, or even almost a fine system if they're enforcing. We don't know, but to kind of put a little teeth behind kids parking in the wrong spot, and it doesn't happen until, the second half of the year. we see it more than the first half, so.
Is it just because there may be an open space, or they get there earlier than they assigned?
But they don't ever get here
Space.
earlier, it's simply when they get here later. And it's not just because there's an open space, it's because they're just sometimes students and testing the boundaries and seeing what they can get away with.
They can park closer if they park over the crosswalks or
Yeah, it's the
in
park.
employee spots or.
It's
A lot of times it's kids
more
coming back
employee
from-
and guest spots than it is anywhere else.
Uh-huh.
Usually it's like kids coming back from College Credit Plus or Auburn or other things.
So
So
it's-
park in the back.
Is there, I think overall there's adequate parking for everyone.
There's
It's
plenty
just-
of parking, it's a
it's-
matter of
it's just the
the
walk
parking is
that,
way over there, and it's cold outside, and Dr. Malacker's spot's open, so I'm gonna put it right there, because I don't have to walk as far. So that's part of it, so.
You should paint your spots and paint your,
They don't care.
put your pictures on it. I know. I don't either, I think
The
I'd take
prior
your spots
superintendent was
sometimes
much better at
too.
enforcing
There's no
parking
spot.
lot.
He truly was.
Jim would go out all the time and yell at kids all the time, all day long.
I ask them to move when I see them, but I don't go out.
I told Chris when he started, I'm like, you realize you're on parking lot duty.
Did you get him a hat?
I see, that's it, I don't have a hat.
Bright yellow vest.
If I had the vest and hat, I would go out and do it, but.
I can
gotta
get
be-
you that, Chris.
No?
Is that gonna be your retirement job?
Yes.
Fabulous idea. I
That's a
would do
great
that.
idea.
Exercise
It's not all day
in the
long.
morning,
It's
I can
not.
handle that.
You could, that'd be perfect.
Come in and get your steps.
Also on the agenda, it's under the buildings and grounds area. We typically do a shared service agreement with Painesville for sharing transportation routes. Last month we had the fuel agreement on, but they sent us the other one right after the board agenda went out, so that one, this one's not here. Typically, we don't utilize it, but we keep it in place in case we decide to share routes at some point for special education. And there's also a placeholder for gas easement with Enbridge, formerly Dominion. As with the Career Tech grant, there's, the addition, they have to reroute the main gas line. And that's, I think it's still in discussion of location, but there's an easement agreement that Dan's been working on that.
Yeah, it's
Soon
definitely.
We'll talk about it more at buildings and grounds, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, it's in discussion of location and how and when.
The main,
Yeah.
The main.
do we know that?
The main currently runs underneath the media center hallway.
Which is illegal.
Yeah.
It originally went along the old drive, and then they built over top of it.
Yeah.
So now it'll
Ooh.
come in through that field there and around the back.
Dominion
Oh,
covers
who's
the,
gotta pay for that?
Dominion actually is covering the cost. It's
They
just-
are.
They want to go through the band field. And.
They're going to, the plan is right now is to, is it bore, is that what they use? the
Yeah.
term? Yeah, to
Yeah.
bore underneath so they don't disturb the field. I basically said to them, from August through November, that field's off limits because we have kids on it every day. And they said that they would note that and work around it.
Huh.
Yeah, it's not, they did some boring over here at the CTE edition. Can't even tell it was done. But they
Yeah.
rerouted the existing line so they could abandon the existing.
How
line.
deep do they do that?
Don't
3 to
know.
5 feet, I think.
Is that?
I guess the question over here is, how important is that oak tree out front?
That's very important. The big one, it's
Yeah.
got a name.
It has a name.
The oak tree's been named, I forget what the name is, but it does have a name.
Because within that easement, they have the right to remove anything.
Yeah.
So that, once they mark that, and they will mark that for approval before they finalize anything, so we have to keep that in mind if that is a
It's a named tree.
Significant.
Will they just cap it?
cap one.
The old one?
Yeah.
I believe they did already. They put a temporary in.
They'll remove the old line.
No, I don't know.
Yeah, they'll remove it because, we're building on top of it.
One time we had, it was for sewer, we had a boring done with an easement over by the baseball fields, and they ended up having the water bubbles in the field, and it was pretty wild to see, but hopefully we won't have those issues with this one. All right, so next thing on the agenda, last time we talked a little bit about the termination benefits fund, so I did a little bit of analysis. Mike helped me out, he's out on vacation this week, but put a summary together. So a lot of districts in the state have what's called a termination benefits fund. So a lot of times when teachers, administrators, and you know, even our classified staff retire, they usually get pay out of a portion of their sick leave. And then we have an early retirement incentive that also the employees can be eligible for if they retire the first year they're eligible. And what the termination benefits fund does is you transfer an amount from your general fund to that fund each year, like an equal amount each year, kind of to keep consistency. Because some years you'll have 1 or 2 retirements, some years you'll have 10, some years you'll have 20. And so when you're forecasting your general fund, your expenses for the related termination can kind of vary around. So you do an annual transfer, you kind of have, and if you build up a reserve, so you have funds set aside if there's ever a large year.
And we have a large year this year.
We have a very large year this year.
Yeah, we've been doing it for what, like 4 years?
So we actually started in fiscal year 2021, which was started in July of 2020 is when we started this fund. And at the time, we went back and went through our severance, and we averaged about $200,000 a year in severance. So we made a decision at the time, $250 a year, that we transfer each year to that fund, so we'd start building up a little bit of reserve.
Were we paying out of that fund then, ever since then?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, so all any severance we
so-
pay comes out of that fund.
Okay,
So-
so the carryover was never 200, because it would be less than.
The highest, I wanted to kind of go through price, pass this out, but, you know, this is now we have 5 years, and our highest balance was $220,000 at the end of fiscal year '23. Then in fiscal year '24, we paid out $308,000 in severance. This current year has been light, based on from last year, but now coming into 2026, we have, as of right now, with all of our known retirements and early retirement incentives, we
Okay,
have,
let's guess. How much we're gonna spend?
how much would that?
How much we're gonna spend, or how much is the balance gonna be?
How much we're gonna spend.
How much we're gonna
What's,
spend?
what's currently in there now?
So there's currently $209,000 in the fund right now.
We're probably gonna spend $500,000. Maybe even more than that.
Currently at $570,000 is what we know because of the change in STRS and the people who are retiring right now. So in the prior meeting, with the early retirement incentive, over the course of the last 5 years, we've only had 4 employees that were qualified and took it over the last 5 years. We've only had 4 employees. This year, we have 6 right now that are taking advantage of that incentive.
It will be larger next year too, I would guess, because I think next year is a large anticipated retirement year.
So we're
But it's
paying.
not gonna be the first year hit for it, though. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've got a couple years worth of first years going this year. Next year,
We've
it'll
got-
just
yes.
be one class of.
Next year,
individuals.
but that was a large hiring class though,
Okay.
as of that.
I
So
think we'll have a little more clarity as we get through.
Yeah, as they cycle through.
And we're not paying that till fiscal '26.
Right.
So it's not in the current year budget, so technically speaking, we don't have to are we making the transfer now, or do we have to
So-
make the transfer next year?
My proposal is that we transfer an extra $200,000 in this fiscal year in June. Then, because typically we do our transfers in July or annual transfer.
But then that gets our
250.
cash balance down.
Correct. We could do more, but I think we'll see what the state budget comes out if we want to ramp it up again, because it might be a cash balance limit. We'll talk
Do
about
you
state
think they'll
budget.
have that wrapped up before our board meeting, though?
I don't know.
Right? Like, we would have to have another meeting, and we don't want to
I
do
would,
that.
I would think we're gonna know before then, because there's both, when it comes out of conference committee, they have to have both the House and the Senate vote, and the governor has to review and sign by June 30th, which I know a couple of years ago, they went past June 30th. So I guess, you know, if we wanna transfer more now in this fiscal year, we can. I mean, really, it's,
I mean, like, we could do it in advance. We could do next year's transfer now if we wanted to,
we could,
right? Like, there's no downside
yeah.
to reducing our cash balance, we're doing it anyway.
Right, I mean, at the end of the day, looking at the 5-year forecast, it'll make a difference just looking at it by year, but at the same time, it doesn't change the financial picture, it's just a.
No, but it does get our cash balance down for that portion of, like, the purpose of
Right,
not having to give back so much money, if that were the case.
yeah.
So if we were gonna do that, like, if we were gonna we would transfer 200, like, what would that look like? If we were gonna do this year's and next year's, if we
Right.
could to figure out like
So-
what next year's anticipated payout would be, where would we be at? Like, we could do a number of years. Because we would be doing it at the end of next year also. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right, if we're gonna be running short again.
There's no downside.
Let me,
It's coming out of our forecast anyway.
let me pass this out. So the top portion of this analysis kind of just shows all the history and then FY '26 with the transfer that we typically would do. So basically, if we were just status quo as we've normally done, the bottom section basically shows my initial proposal was transferring 200,000 extra this year and 200,000 extra next year, which would be in July. So I mean, it's really a timing thing. So our annual transfer would be 450 this year, 450 next year. With these known retirements, we'd be at like a $289,000 balance. And there's still gonna be, there are still, like teachers, administrators are always retiring at the end of the school year. But during the school year is when we see more of our classified. A lot of times, classified employees will retire end of December because they worked enough days to get an extra year of credit for retirement. And those, or if people just resign, you have vacation payouts and things like that. So those are expenses that happen throughout the year, but your biggest chunks happen in July. And if an employee has so much severance that they have to defer part of it until January to a new tax year, sometimes you'll see some things happen in January.
Does that have to go through the special pay plan? Do they have to declare that?
It's required to go through a special pay plan
It is.
for administrators and teachers exempt. That does save the district money because you don't have to pay the Medicare tax on that. So there's a savings to the district by requiring the special pay plan. You can't pick and choose on that. It gives the employee more,
Let's go through Medic. You don't pay Medic?
you don't pay Medicare on it.
Okay.
So I have a question here. We're gonna pay out 570,000 approximately in severance and early retirement, and that covers 6 employees?
It's actually 18 employees, so I have in principle, there's actually 18 retirements, 6 of those, 18 retirements and resignations. There's 6 employees. ERIP is the early retirement incentive program. So there's 6 employees that qualify for the incentive, and that's the total
That's the
cost of
263.
263,000 for those 6 employees. The other 12 employees that are retiring aren't eligible for that incentive. They just get their typical severance pay.
I'm just gonna suggest we do this year and next year for the anticipated and just do it now. There's no downside. We're gonna do it at the end of '26, right? And if we want,
I mean, typically we do it right in July, so it's.
right, so if we're gonna do it and we want to anticipate that we may have to, like, who knows how the property tax stuff is gonna pan out and the cash balance stuff, I would just do it now. I don't know how you feel about that, Dennis, but like, it makes sense, like, we get our cash balance down, we have to fund that anyhow. Put it off into the special fund and be done with it, and then we don't have to do it, except unless there's an excess at the end of next year that we know we have to pay out, right? And then we would do we would be planning 250 in July of
26.
26.
That'd be fiscal year
For the
27.
following year, right, for fiscal year '27, and that would be normal and usual and customary, and we could look at it then. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and at the end of next year, if we decided we wanted to pre-fund that again, we could do that at that time.
Right. And some of the things that, like, I've heard from some of our state budget webinars is like, don't do anything that you wouldn't normally do, like, because of the state budget per se. But, we do this annual transfer every year, but we have the evidence right here. It's $570,000
Right, I mean-
severance is much more than we've had.
We can talk to this as an anomaly, and
Right.
what I've heard is as long as you can show that it's something that you were anticipating and it's an anomaly, you're not working to just.
Right.
And then what do we do with that money? Does that sit, it's just in our regular cash balance and it's sitting in Star Ohio.
Correct.
So it's earning interest, and it's also, you're also posting interest to it because it's required.
Right, and I have that document on the sheet here, it just shows what our annual interest is each year. We're at about $9,000 right now. Now, obviously, our cash balance has varied over the years, and back in 21, 22 interest rates were close to zero, so that's why there was only a couple $100, but we do get a little bit of interest on those funds.
I don't see any downside to doing it now, based on what you think is gonna happen by the end of next year. Granted, we're not gonna pay it out until July of '26, right, the rest of it? And we'd be doing another transfer, but we can shore it up at the end of June of next year as well. I don't,
Right.
personally, I don't see what the issue is. We're not getting rid of the cash.
Right.
But we're accounting for something that we're going to have to put aside anyhow. It's,
What would the anticipated retirements be over the next year or two?
I don't know if I have.
I don't know if we have those numbers specifically, because we have to, just because it's an incentive doesn't mean we have employees who go. We have some who have foregone the incentive this year. I would guess to say that it would be around, I think I wanna say there's about 8 to 10 we know who are looking at.
for next
For
year.
So
next
next
year.
year would be another large
It
year.
would be another large year for sure. And that's, I'm just specifically speaking to teaching staff and administrative staff that we know of. We have some who are who have made it clear that they're going next year, so I can tell you like 3 for sure who I know, there are no doubts. If we asked for the letter, we would get it now. But I think that we have a lot more who are really on the fence in terms of, can I go, should I go, real close, so.
You know, I'm just gonna really like make the suggestion that we think about all the transfers that we make for FY '26. Transfers to our athletic fund, we know we do it, you know, we have that built in, would we transfer 100 and,
100,000 athletics a year.
right? If we can do any of those, it's just a transfer, and we're getting rid of the cash, and just pre-funding those funds, because I'm gonna do it shortly thereafter, the end of the year anyway. I would make that suggestion, that's just something that I would be looking at based on what's coming down the pike in the budget. And I would not normally suggest that if that was not the case, but
Yeah.
we have a,
Should this be a new practice that we?
I mean, it's a
transfer at
good
the end of the
reason to
fiscal year?
look at it. I mean, we should be looking at it and saying,
Well,
I have it.
So for the athletic funds, so typically we do it around February of the fiscal year, because
Mhm.
in the
That's
fall,
after
the
football
football.
season.
Okay.
Football supports the athletic fund.
Yeah.
But we know we're paying it.
Right.
We know we're making
And then
it.
once you get to the spring sports, it doesn't collect the type of revenue that the fall sports do, and that's when you start falling behind. And then with the banner sponsorship program as well, because that goes to the athletic fund as well. So typically we start strong, and then they hit throughout the second half. That's just what
I mean, that's just my suggestion, you know, like.
I think it might be good. I think I do like the idea of, we just transfer this year, the July, and then the additional money to the termination benefits fund. For forecasting purposes, obviously, I won't be here for the November forecast, but maybe we continue to forecast a 250 transfer to the termination benefits fund for fiscal year '26, in case that's needed. And when we get more clarity, maybe it's more towards the end of the fiscal year, we already forecasted.
Right, either you need it, you don't need it, and if you don't really need it for what you're gonna pay, you can always be planning for pre-funding the following year. I don't know, I just think the
So-
budget makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, you've got, you're transferring in for 24, 250, and then for 25, 26, you're transferring in 450, correct?
Right, that was an extra 200,000 a year, which what I was originally thinking, but I kind of like Linda's idea of, let's just do it now and get it out of the way, and then if the state budget really puts in a low cash balance cap, that'll help us and not lose those funds. It's not like, we're not hiding money, it's just we're doing a transfer a month early, because we were gonna do it in July anyway, so it's really just a.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
It's just that, so I'm just trying to understand the numbers here, so.
Right.
Every year we've been putting 250 in, and then next year you want to put 450 in. So what would be the amount you would transfer this year? Would it be 450?
It would be,
It would be
So-
700 now, right?
maybe, because
'Cause
we already transferred
did
200
250.
this year back in July. And then, so if we did the extra 200, and thus that 200, 250, so it's gonna be another 650 this year.
I don't think it's a bad idea. And we're not asking for it back, we're never asking for that money back, we're spending it. And we
It'll be,
have it,
and
right,
in
like,
worst
so-
case is if you over transfer the fund, you just skip next year's transfer and bring that cash balance back down. Because I mean, it's going to, I mean, we have 600 employees, people are always
Right.
retiring, so you're always gonna have that obligation, just.
Well, obviously, they're going to clamp down on large cash balances, and so, and you're right, if they're a proven expense, and you're not trying to game the system, then, yeah, I wouldn't see any problem doing that ahead of time.
Again, and I would consider the athletic one as well.
Yeah.
Those are the only two that I know we typically make.
That's typically.
We don't do food we don't have to do any other
Food
ones.
services
Everything else
typically-
is just cleanup at the
Yeah.
end of the year, so,
Yeah. Usually it's just some small cleanup, and that's.
right, these are the two that we
Yeah, athletics.
typically budget anyway.
Right.
I'm all for it. Do it.
All right. State budget update. I don't know where to start with that one.
It is,
Um,
it is
so,
insanity.
Just to kind of go over the process, you have the governor's budget that came out, then the House passed their budget, then the Senate recently passed their budget. The House voted not to concur, happens every budget cycle, now they're in conference committee. Conference committee's behind closed doors, they usually come out a week before the end of the fiscal year, and here's the final budget we decided. So it's, I always find it interesting, it's a public process throughout the whole thing, and then all of a sudden it goes behind closed doors. And it could be part of option A, B, and C of the House, the Senate, or the governors, or it could be option D that no one's even saw or heard or talked about previously.
Or anywhere in
Uh,
between.
Or, yeah, and so, as far, I'm gonna pass out, this is a simulation, it's kind of small, but it's, I'm just so you guys have it for information. In terms of the actual state funding piece of the Fair School Funding Plan, or whatever variation we're calling it, we do okay. I think that both the governor's plan was to continue to phase in this Fair School Funding Plan, but didn't update the expenditure inputs, but then there was a reduction in guarantees. The House has some, they basically paused the formula and they gave everybody a little bit more money. I'm not sure how they actually figured that out. And then the Senate version is phasing in the Fair School Funding Plan, but I don't think they touched the guarantees. They also did not update the expenditure inputs either. So looking at this, under the governor's proposal, I'm just gonna look at next fiscal year, for fiscal year 26. If it's under the governor's proposal, our state funding was estimated to go up 192,000. So it goes from 7.96 million to 8.15 million.
That's the governor's proposal?
That's the governor's. Under the House, the increase is 279,000, so it's an extra 80,000 in the first year.
That's the next two columns? That's
Yes.
the House, okay, thank you. And then next to it, probably the
And the
Senate.
next two are the Senate, where the Senate's a $479,000 increase in year one. So our state funding, we're at just shy of 8 million, it'd be 8.1 governor, 8.24 House, 8.4 Senate. And then there's additional increase in the following year. In the forecast, in the 5-year forecast, we just assume flat line. We do that every time it's state budget time, because it could be any of these numbers or none of these numbers, because the final budget could vary. And then, obviously, just like our forecastings or simulations, if things change, it doesn't mean that this is what we're actually going to get. It runs through the formula based on updated property tax values and income tax, income levels and things like that. So the simulations are more meant to help the state understand what their obligation would be. Any questions on that state funding piece of things?
No, it's everything else.
It's everything else that's the
Mhm.
concern.
We won't have a final by Thursday.
I doubt it.
I don't think we'll have a final.
No.
It would be interesting to like,
I did hear that, I just read this, I think it was yesterday, now they are not thinking the inside millage is gonna make it into the budget. So
Wow.
I think that they,
that's catastrophic.
yes, yes.
I was gonna talk to that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
It would be interesting to have a summary that can be presented on camera at our board meeting of the different proposals and how, just brief,
Yeah.
like, of all the
There's.
weird stuff that they've got in there that would affect. I think people need to hear that because it is insanity.
Brief about it, though.
What's
Yeah,
that?
There's nothing brief about it.
Well,
Yeah,
but
trust-
just-
Yeah.
They're like,
So,
OASBO did put, like, they did put out summaries.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like they didn't put out brief, and we can try and summarize
We can
them.
try to summarize the summary.
yeah.
Right? I
Yeah,
mean,
we can try. We'll try to do something.
So the first thing I handed out is this called the schedule that comes from the county auditor's office. And it's an estimate they give us each year, for each calendar year, what the property tax revenue would look like. The county auditor assumed a 94% collection rate, we're more like a 99.
I was gonna say 98 at least.
98, 99 collection rate. And the main reason I passed this out was there's House Bill 335, which was rumored to go into the state budget, maybe it's not, which was basically eliminating inside millage for all government entities except for townships. And the logic behind townships was they can't levy income tax, where school districts can. And, this applies to the counties, the cities, municipalities, villages, all that stuff too. So on the bottom chart on the top line is our inside millage estimate. According to the county auditor's office, it's almost $7.8 million. So if inside millage goes away, it'd be
Where are you at, Gary?
down here in the bottom, this column here, it's
Oh, okay, thank you.
$7,796,000.
Yeah.
According to the Legislative Service Commission for the state of Ohio, their estimate was 8.3 million loss, which, they're probably looking at full collection, this is looking at 94% collection, so that probably is most of that difference. Plus, this is only Lake County with a very small piece of geography.
And they would just eliminate it completely?
So that was the thing, was eliminated completely. They were eliminating the unvoted tax, which is allowable, which is inside millage is authorized by the Constitution. So there's question about whether or not the General Assembly can take that away because it's in the Constitution. So there would probably be legal challenges brought by somebody if that was the case. Now,
Right, and so then you would get and if that was the case, you would get the money because they would stay it and they would give you the money and then you wouldn't be able to spend it. Basically,
yeah,
because you'd have to put it in reserve just in case.
right,
When that would go into the cash carryover.
Right,
right.
unless you open a special fund.
Yeah. The other thing that's in House Bill 335 was you can no longer renew emergency levies. We don't have any emergency levies, we have a continuous substitute, so that doesn't really affect this, but like a district like Willow East Lake, who has mostly emergency levies.
Right.
I guess my understanding is they changed the name to what they really are, because they've been called emergency levies since they were enacted in the 1970 or 1980.
Fixed.
But the term emergency, the commonly, what the normal person thinks emergency is not what emergency levy really is. So it's really referred to as this fixed sum levy. It's basically the levy that I'm gonna collect this dollar amount from this levy. So they're renaming it to fixed sum levies, but they're not allowing any emergency levies to be renewed. You'd have to put a new fixed sum levy to replace basically that emergency levy.
All right, but bonus for Riverside,
But we don't.
we converted everything to
Right.
continuous, so we are golden as far as that goes.
Right, right. The other piece in that legislation is it would include emergency levies and substitute levies into the 20 mil floor. So I passed out this is our slide to go through all the time about our current levies. We're at the 20 mil floor with our current expense levies. Then we have the substitute levy that's at current tax rates 2.9, so we're at 22.9 mils if you add in that. So, that would take us, if they included the substitute levy in the 20 mil floor, it would take us off the floor but we're not, we're less than a 15% increase away from being back on the floor again anyways.
So
That
would they
was-
be taking away that 4.7?
It's, well, we're 2.9 over right now. They wouldn't necessarily take it away, it's just, you lower the floor, now you work your way back to the floor again. So you wouldn't necessarily lose. There was concern at one point that they just take it away, and it's not necessarily what it is. One of the nuances that I don't have clarification on in the simulations that the state put out is like for us, this is getting really complicated in a way. You have the 20 mil floor in place, so let's say we're including the substitute levy, so that makes us 22.9 mils. If they take away our inside millage and you back off 4.8 mils, that takes us down to 18.1. We would roll back up to 20 because the 20 mil floor would still be in place. So the loss would probably be half of what originally anticipated, assuming that's unless there's a fix to that or that's clarified in that legislation. So it's kind of like, if there's a nuance there with the 20 mil floor. If they don't adjust the floor, move the floor, if inside millage goes away, some districts would roll right back up. Perry, for example, they only have inside millage and current expense levies and no other PI, substitute, anything like that. So if you took away their inside millage, they'd roll right back to 20, it'd be a net, no change.
All of our inside millage is dedicated to general fund.
All of our inside millage goes to general fund, yes. There are some districts that have moved inside millage.
Correct.
Now, based on current law, not that I'm proposing this, but based on current law, the way things operate now, if as a board decided, hey, I want to move 1 mil of my inside millage to PI.
Debt service.
You could do it to PI, I don't know if you can do it to debt service, but if you do it to PI, so let's say the board says, hey, we want to move inside millage, you'd have a public hearing and then you
You
vote to move that.
can't
could
do
be
it to debt service, and you can do it to debt service, and the reason I know that is because we tried to move it to debt service to say that solvency assistance was debt, because that's how they classify it on your financial statements,
Okay.
but that's why nobody would ever give us an answer, but it is for debt or PI.
Okay.
So that I do know.
There was a district who recently tried to move it to PI and
Berkshire
the auditor
said no.
reversed it back, yeah.
Yeah. But if the board was to decide to move inside millage to PI, that would actually be on voted tax increase, because then your millage would roll back up.
Yes.
And you
So-
have to have special hearings, and you have to have.
Yeah. And then
It's a
you probably would
process.
never pass a levy again, because the community will find out and be angry, and but there's that tool in the toolbox that you don't really want to take out of the toolbox, in my opinion.
But districts are gonna start to think that way.
And that's the thing, it's, losing.
Because they're going to have to, they're gonna be like so strapped for, oh my God, now we have no money left, you're immediately taking my cash flow away from me. They're going to start doing it more and more. And all these unintended consequences are gonna happen that weren't anticipated. And did you do the webinar on, was it Monday or Tuesday?
I did it on Monday, yeah.
Okay, so,
I got shut out and I had to watch the
Oh, I
live
had to-
stream.
right, I had to watch it on the live
Then
stream
it was-
also.
Then it was blocked on our computer, so I had to pull my phone out and sit
but
there
I gotta
like this
tell you,
for
it was
an
really
hour.
fascinating for all the unintended consequences that that he was speaking to.
Yeah.
Like that they don't know. Well, we asked, but they don't know. Nobody knows. And the fact of the matter is that what struck me was they're so far into the budget process and there are so many unanswered questions that the legislators don't know the answers to,
Right.
that it's,
It's a very concerning time, and, obviously, property tax reform is an important topic right now, but there's so many proposals out there that have so many different effects and potential consequences. It's,
I
I think any quick decision could
Yeah.
cause a lot of issues, like even when I was talking about the emergency levy, and you can't renew it now, it doesn't really affect us, but it affects other districts, and you can't renew an emergency levy, you gotta pass a new levy. Well, new levies don't get that 10% rollback and 2.5% owner occupied credits, like Willoughby East Lake, if they had to redo all their levies, all their emergency levies, not renew them and do fixed sum levies, every one of those levies is gonna cost 12.5% more for a homeowner that lives in their home.
Right,
because
they might
lost
not,
that
they might
state
not be
reimbursement.
assessing any different they might not collect any bigger tax
District won't collect
dollars,
any
but the
additional
people will
funds.
pay more. His final comments to me, like, were really, really impactful. The fact that they want to fix property taxes and they've had all this time to be able to address the issue. And because they've kicked the can down the road so far, now everybody's complaining because of the property tax bills that increased so much with the valuations, that now, and the only people who are being held accountable for it are schools and townships and other, like, small entities like libraries and whatnot, and they're just pushing it, it's not solving the problem.
Right.
It's solving the problem from their perspective, and they're giving money back to the taxpayers, but it's catastrophic for every taxing entity out there. It was interesting. I just thought that was like a really, really good hour and 15 minutes to spend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So change is coming.
We just don't know what
We
it
don't know
is.
what.
There's, this is probably, out of my career, this is the first state budget where it's, number one, the three, the House, the Senate, and the governor are so far apart on things. And number two, all this floating legislation that may or may not be put in the
There-
budget
yeah.
that could have serious financial implications one way or another. And it's,
And yeah, and right, and when you
just-
say
and
the
just
word
don't-
serious, like, we're talking like serious impact to taxing authorities. It's huge. This is the biggest thing I think I've ever seen.
Well, and if you argue one, you're arguing against another, and they seem to contradict each other too.
And then the OSCPA put out yesterday that the state is running like a, excess of revenue expectations already by $800 million. I just thought that was funny. But we're not getting any of it.
And last thing, we're pretty much out of time here. The PI forecast, I'll have an update for the next board meeting. I've been working on that. I mean, it's gonna be very similar to what we've presented previously. The only thing I want to bring up to the committee is I've received information from Mike Priscilla regarding some borrowing for Riverview and a tax anticipation note that was requested by Mr. Fishel. I've not had any discussions with anybody, I've not been included in that process, other than Mike Priscilla gave me a heads up that that information was requested and sent me a copy of it. So I'm not sure if I should be including something like that in this forecast, if there's gonna be anything proposed on the next board agenda. I have not heard anything from anybody officially.
So there's the possibility that we will be seeing things for the first time at the board table regarding the PI fund
Yep.
and borrowing. And we're not having any conversation about borrowing in this committee, and we should be.
Correct. So I just want, in good faith, want to make sure that the committee's aware I got this information, and I haven't had any discussion.
Can we
really.
request that information?
I can send you a copy of it.
I guess what I'm asking is, can we request further information on, like, what have those conversations entailed? Why have those conversations been taking place, and why is it happening with one individual? Not the board. Like, that is something that should be happening with the board, and we find this time and again, that one individual is talking to consultants that we do business with, and those consultants are providing data and answers because they're being asked to, and I get it.
Right.
But that information should be coming, that's important stuff, and it should be running through a process, and it is not. I have a problem with that.
I think sometimes in the information gathering process, you have so many different things coming in until it gets sorted out and you have a plan to present, then maybe it's better to hold off until you have a plan to present.
I do not believe that. I believe that those are things that you cannot come up with a plan with one person. That plan has to be vetted by the professionals that we hire and people who work in that field. Like, that has to be presented here. We have to have the opportunity to discuss that. Mike Priscilla should be in here giving us that information. What does that do? What does that mean? I'm gonna go into a board meeting blind. And I don't even have my questions prepared on what I would ask as a professional in that field, right, as well as you, right? That is inappropriate to do that to our treasurer. That's his job. It annoys the crap out of me. that that happens. That's why we hire you. That is why you're leaving, quite frankly.
Why are you leaving?
I don't have to discuss that on
Oh.
camera.
Okay.
Right? But at the
Well,
end
what
of the
did you
day,
imply? What did you imply?
I am implying that we do not treat our professionals with the respect they deserve, and we don't give them the opportunity to do their job. That is his job. That is his job to collect that data. If you want questions asked, you ask the treasurer to provide that information, to gather the information. That's his job. That's his profession. It is not the board member's profession who's out there doing it. Like, Gary's gonna have 1,000 times more
Oh, I thought
capability.
that was the heater.
No, that's the drum line. 9 o'clock.
That's the wrap-up music, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
I don't feel it's appropriate for us to be doing that. Those conversations, if we want to request that kind of information, should be brought at new business in our board meeting. Please, Finance Committee and Mr. Placco, go ahead and like start investigating that, bring some information back to the board, to the Finance Committee, whatever it is. That's a lengthier process than, hey, here, we're gonna present something at the board meeting and 5 minutes later, we're going to vote on it, because that's what's gonna happen, Mr. Heaney. He's gonna put that on a board agenda. And we're gonna be expected to vote on something, and I haven't had any professional, like, time to review it in my profession. That's what I do for a living. It's what you do for a living. I want to review the data. I'm not going to have time to dig into that.
Well, professional experience is very important. Having that knowledge and background is very important. Regardless of what you do, a person with knowledge in that field is very important to gather that.
Are we allowing Mr. Placco to do that? No. It went outside of that process. That is what I find extremely, extremely compromising to this district. And I'm going to continue to go on record as saying that. I feel like we do it. We do it with our superintendent. We do it with our curriculum. We're doing it with our marketing. We do it with every professional that we have on staff here. I think it's terrible.
But with those professionals, how did we end up in deficit spending?
It's a levy cycle. It's the way it works. That's the way it works. That's the way it works.
Okay. Anything else?
That's all I have.
I don't know anything.
Okay, thank you very much.